Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life, control your
Welcome
life.
back, everyone, to the 817 podcast. We hope you enjoyed the last couple weeks of episodes celebrating our 1-year anniversary of doing this and getting to hear from fellow listeners. We know we really enjoyed those conversations and feel like there was a lot of really good little nuggets that came out of them.
Yeah, no, it was, and people from all walks of life, people who have lived in Fort Worth since the beginning of time, and to people who just moved here, different professions, city employees, health, finance. It was awesome. You know, I think it's cool to be doing this, you know, and actually knowing you're connecting with people. You know, it felt very like we were friends already, talking to everybody.
For sure. There's like a level of relationship that you feel like you already have.
Yeah. Have you had anyone ever stop you or say anything to you that they listen, or anybody around the woodwork?
I don't think so, but I'm not as recognizable as you know?
You mean because I'm bald and beard, or what do you mean?
Yeah. Like I look like a generic, like, hipster millennial white guy, and you're bald.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
You know what I
like
mean?
That. Yeah, I like that.
You got a more recognizable face than I do.
Got it. I'll take that as a positive. You know, take that as a positive.
Well, we are going to dive in this week. Got a lot of, like, fun, interesting stories that we feel like have been coming out. First, this is kind of like take it as you will story, but Travel and Leisure magazine ranked Fort Worth as the 12th best city to visit in the U.S. It's an interesting list. I think that, you know, there are a lot of people that work really hard in Visit Fort Worth and that we've seen all around and gotten to talk to, you know, like trying to continue to push Fort Worth as a place to visit. And so I hope they enjoy this as a little pat on the back from readers. But this list came from Travel and Leisure readers. It doesn't really tell us what the, like, ranking criteria was, or like how they got rated. It doesn't give you any details.
And the title is the top 15 cities in the United States by Travel and Leisure, September 8th. So it was recent. But go ahead.
Yeah, Fort Worth was 12th on the list. Oh, what did you think about this?
So yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, I thought it was just one of those kind of where we are going to create a clickable SEO article, and we made this generic list by just surveying our readers who reads Travel and Leisure, and based off the list, you could guess a lot of demographics, but I won't be that guy. But I wonder, I would have been nice to know what is the demographics of the people who blog, age, income, race, gender. Would have been nice, because to me, I've been to a lot of these places multiple times. Charleston, South Carolina was number 1. Santa Fe, New Mexico, super dope. New Mexico is cool. Savannah, Georgia, it has a very, like, tourist beach area, but it's, to me, one of the most segregated cities. I mean, I work in Savannah, Georgia public schools. Very sad work of what's how segregated that area is. New Orleans is cool, right? So that's 4. New York City was 5, but so we were 12. Yeah, that's kind of my think about it. I'm not, like, excited or proud. I mean, we are the 12th biggest city, I guess, as well. So maybe we should be 12. I don't know.
Well, we're 13.
Yeah,
actually.
correct.
Yeah,
Everyone keeps saying 12, and I actually been
because we
correcting people.
lost to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as I, like, read the cities on this list, I feel like they benefit a lot more from tourism than Fort Worth generally does, and part of where we see that is, you know how, like, every single elected official and, like, candidate in the past election kept saying that, like, we need to flip the tax base upside down. Like right now we rely so much on residential tax when we want to rely more on commercial taxes. And it's like, okay, what does that mean? In layman's terms, to me, it means that we rely more on the money from the people in the city than people outside the city. And what that tells me is that, like, tourism isn't the main driving factor of things in Fort Worth. And so I read this list as kind of like, okay, like, that's cool to be on there. It's cool that people come here and, like, have a good time and, like, have good memories of coming to Fort Worth. Maybe they'll come back. Maybe they'll tell their friends. But I was like, we benefit a lot less from tourism than any of the other cities around, or any of the other cities on this list. And maybe that says something about where Fort Worth actually stands in a, like, tourism industry type of space. Where I think a couple years ago, like, we were getting searched less than Tulsa, Oklahoma, for as far as, like, tourism goes. And so you're right, like, a high quality SEO friendly article like this maybe does help Fort Worth in that case. But I was like, I don't know. It was the same as you. Like, it wasn't an exciting thing to me, but I'm glad that when people come here, they enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went and saw Leon perform the other day at Southside Ballroom. Great job. Abraham Alexander did an awesome job. It was great. First concert since the pandemic. Super awesome. Super awesome experience. But then we went to the Armory, the cocktail joint in Deep Ellum afterwards, and there was a guy sitting there, and he's from Connecticut, and he's here for a concert. He's, like, following his favorite band. But he's, like, here for a week in Dallas, and I was like, what's up? But he was next to me, and he ended up buying me and my wife's first drink. He said, I've been sitting here for 4 hours, and no one has talked to me. You know, you're the first person who talked to me. And I said, yeah, because I'm from Fort Worth. And then I started talking to him about Fort Worth, and I don't think I sold him. He was like, yeah, no, I'm going to stay around this area. But I was like, hey, here's a list of things to do in Fort Worth just in case you ever come back. So here it is. And it was pretty funny. So
that is funny.
So I think, like, you know, Dallas is not, I don't know where Dallas is on this list, but that guy, if he's a travel and leisure guy, his survey will say Dallas, no bueno. So
there's another funny thing. So Cal Golden Bears played at TCU this weekend.
That's a fun one.
And when they tweeted out their, like, you know, promo image on game day when Cal did, they had the Dallas skyline in the background and not Fort Worth. I was like, oh man, somebody really missed the boat on that one. But speaking of people and things coming to Fort Worth, the National Finals Rodeo, which had relocated to Fort Worth during the pandemic, decided that they're going to permanently move from Las Vegas to Fort Worth and Dickies Arena. So, I mean, that's a pretty big transition. I think it was something that we thought could potentially happen, but it was maybe like 5-10 years down the road. But it seems like that has been accelerated, and it's making Fort Worth its permanent home.
Yeah. I think that is cool. I mean, in context, it's like let's say the NFL of rodeos, like Fort Worth is home.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
To the Super Bowl.
Yeah, to the Super Bowl. Like, that's super awesome. I mean, 30 years it's been in Las Vegas, and so that is awesome. I mean, something we're always advocates for. We talked about travel and leisure earlier. You can put up buildings, you can make cool food spots, but you can't create history, right? That's why New Orleans is cool. That's why Fort Worth is cool, is because of that, our cowboy roots. And so, as a supporter of it, to dive into that, you know, I think it's awesome, and I think it's cool, and it fits Fort Worth. However, it still, unfortunately, is all people think of Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I will say, like, a number of people, and a number of especially business leaders, small business leaders in the area, I will say, had negative things to say about a large number of the patrons that came to the rodeo last year during the pandemic. You know, remember that? People about just like masks in the street everywhere, like people coming into businesses refusing to put on masks, just like that type of attitude. And so hopefully over time, the people coming to this event learn to love and appreciate Fort Worth the way that locals do, and learn to respect it also. Because I would say for a number of people, it was a pretty negative experience having them here. And like, obviously the context was literally the peak of the pandemic.
Yep.
Literally our hospitals being full. So we'll see how that looks the next time that they're here. Realistically, hopefully not the same context. But
I also looking at, so, you know, it's starting in 2022 at Dickies Arena, which is, I mean, when you drive around Dickies Arena, it feels like we're PBR. It just feels so spot on. But what's interesting, what I thought a lot of the selling point of pitting it in Fort Worth was because it was going to be in the larger place in Arlington, because I think the riders, if you remember that story, it was about like the average rider makes like $60,000.
Yeah.
But because the venue space was bigger, riders can make up to $100,000.
Yeah.
So it seems like maybe this doesn't benefit the riders as much because Dickies Arena, I don't know what the size is of that compared to where it was. But I remember that being a part of like the sell for coming to Texas.
Yeah, I remember that too. And I bet that this is something that will probably spread out across Fort Worth and Arlington, and maybe even DFW as a whole. But overall, like, something that is going to get people traveling here, and I don't know, it'd be awesome to see us invest in something and see something come that hits on the modern side of the modern west of Fort Worth as well. But overall, like, big event, bringing people here, and something that Fort Worth was able to sell this massive organization on. It's a positive thing.
Big time. Now, as we deal with, though, like, now we're going to kind of transition from tourism to residence and urban development. You know, let's talk about where kind of the other areas are. We talk about the modern West, and we talk about the modern upgrade of stockyards with Drover, with Mule Alley, you know, and how beautiful it is. Actually, it really is beautiful over there. But the ghosted and lost urban core of the east side and the south side, and the fast growing of the residents upwards, we've seen a lot of articles come out around this, and the one that I think was the best is an article in the Fort Worth Report titled "Tarrant County's Growing Racial Diversity in Suburbs Outpaces Urban Core." So basically, the new census data came out, and it showed that the county population increased 16.7% in the past decade. So Tarrant is 2.1 million people. There is a guy who is the director of urban studies, which I'm pumped, Kyle Walker from TCU. We're going to be interviewing him actually to do a follow-up on this episode, to get an expert, to get a researcher's kind of opinion on all that's going around on the urban development area. But basically, the diversity index increased more in suburban areas than in the city. And the argument there is because of the upward mobility of diverse families making income. There's only super wealthy areas in the loop, so to say, and then poorer areas. So there's not a lot of room for middle class housing, which is a part of the, I guess, hypothesis that they were making here in the story of why is this happening. So I'm going to pause it and pass it to Jimmy here to get what your take is.
Yeah, so that article really plays together well with an article from the Saturday newspaper of the Star Telegram.
It was Sunday.
Oh, it was Sunday.
Yeah, the Renner one?
Yep. Sunday, from the Sunday issue of the Star Telegram, about how there is very little middle-income housing inside of the Loop. So you've got a number of neighborhoods and apartment complexes that are, for a one-bedroom apartment, are, upwards of like $1,200 a month. And with the most expensive being 76123 and 76102, where a one-bedroom fair market rate is $1,390 to $1,530. And on a minimum wage rate of like $7.28 an hour, or even just in general, most jobs being created in the area are like $10 to $12 an hour. That's just not affordable living for the majority of people. So where do you go? You have to go outside the Loop, look to the suburbs. It does mention in here that 76103 and 76105 are the most affordable in the Loop, with one-bedroom housing costing between like $790 and $840 at fair market rate. So those neighborhoods are ours, Meadowbrook, White Lake Hills, Stop 6, and honestly, there's a lot of like stereotypes around these neighborhoods, and so if you're just somebody who is looking on a real estate app and you're looking for rentals, you're going to click on something in one of these neighborhoods and see like a crime report that probably misrepresents these areas versus other areas of Fort Worth. So you see that. Your other option is, okay, I'm going to move out to the suburbs. And so it feels like these things really play hand in hand, where middle class, growing a family, even a one bedroom isn't necessarily going to work for you. So you move outside the Loop into the suburbs, and it's growing in diversity out there. And it leads to more and more segregation within the city. And then I would also argue that like the spaces that are becoming more diverse are in like certain pockets. It's not like everywhere in the suburbs is becoming more diverse, but that's how it's always going to be. Like, you're going to have upper class wealthy neighborhoods behind gates and everything. Like, that's just the nature of capitalism, I guess.
Yeah.
But middle income families really can't afford to live in very many neighborhoods in Fort Worth anymore, and
they can, but
yes.
but not maybe. But I think there's like what's crazy is it's seeing something and having to see past what the stereotypes are,
yes,
or what it means to have, or what poverty means, or what it means to be around people of color. And then like having older homes. So you do have like the upgraded west of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And then you have like the outdated east. Size-wise, housing-wise, same, neighborhood different, more diversity. But then it's going to take to see, like, you're going to have to probably invest in the housing and in order to get the same quality that you want, which is why you move to the suburb, because you don't have to go through that pain.
True.
If you're going to own. And then renting probably as well. It's brand new apartments. So you probably are like, hey, is it better to be close? Or is it's crazy how so many people would prefer to drive really far to work than to live close to work, to not sacrifice these amenities of this feels safer, this feels nicer. It's so that's a part. But something I wanted to hit is another Fort Worth Report article where it actually talked about diverse West Fork Work Ranch neighborhood, which is kind of, I guess I looked at where it was. It's north and it's out of the Loop, but between, I would say, the middle point between like Hazlitt and like the city core. And they show the diversity numbers of that neighborhood breakdown, and it shows 42% white, 21% Asian. I mean, the Asian population in I want to say that's like 4x the Asian population in Fort Worth. Like
I would say even closer to like 10x. Yeah.
And then Hispanic 20%, Black 13%, 2 or more 4%, Native 1%. But I think I'll stop there. I have some thoughts there. But what is your take when you hear that and when you heard about this article?
One, I just really love that series that Fort Worth Report has done, like just asking people who have lived in their neighborhoods a long time what they love about their neighborhoods. And that's been really fun to see a lot of underprofiled neighborhoods getting just time at the forefront for people to read about. But I think that's really interesting. And I think that is like, in a lot of ways, what we want to see is like growing diversity in places that everybody can afford at price points that are comfortable for people to go into. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton of thoughts other than like, I think that diverse people living amongst each other is a good thing and a positive thing for everyone. And so I think it's really cool to see that a like new development neighborhood is hitting that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think where I registered this as well is, you know, one, I would like to know the things that I'm interested in. I've never been to West Fork Ranch, but I would like to know what is the makeup of the neighborhoods. So like this 13%, you know, Black, African American. Is it a section of like, do you have like an apartment or a housing complex? So then that housing complex is where everyone lives.
I get what you mean.
So is it a mix where it's not segregated within the neighborhood, even if the neighborhood is diverse?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what I would be interested in. But then the other thing I'd be interested in too is, you know, this gives me a lot of thinking of like Plano, you know, and Richardson, and the idea of those are very diverse areas.
Yeah.
Right. Like I think
Carrollton has a massive Asian population from all over. I mean, all over.
And I think like the mayor of Plano was a Chinese woman. But I think I don't know if it's still the case, but I know strong Asian representation and leadership in those cities. So then I think, okay, maybe, you know, okay, what is when we look at the future growth of our suburbia, our neighborhoods that become the Planos, the Richardsons, the Carrolltons of Fort Worth, does that kind of happen? I don't know, because I think it's interesting. And what was cool about the article, though, it would also talked about the complex identity where they feel left out of like the city core and identifying with the city core. But like, it's because like they pay city taxes for Fort Worth, but then their school district, they pay for school tax.
To a different ISD.
Yeah, to Keller ISD.
Yeah.
And that I think is also the dilemma of kind of being in the middle of kind of Hazlitt and these like other places, Alliance and Fort Worth.
Yeah. Well, and that speaks even further to the, you know, like 85% of students in Fort Worth ISD like live at or below the poverty line. But we're seeing that, and 85% are Black or brown, but we're seeing that Fort Worth itself is not those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've talked about this, especially the last like month and a half, like the continued disparity between who lives in Fort Worth and who goes to public school in Fort Worth, and like the difference in investment there.
Look at Plano ISD.
Yeah.
I mean, world-class school district, and then, you know, Dallas ISD, where it's just a lot more difficult because I think when I think of equity, it's so much of a race. It's so much like when we think of equity, people think of it from from a race perspective or diversity perspective, like I would argue, like, your neighborhood is diverse, and even the educational levels, the educational levels were 12% no degrees. Yeah, that's, I think the Fort Worth average is 18% no degrees.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's there. So to me, I just think like the battle though is like what I always like to be clear. There is a lot of diversity that is also afraid of poverty and afraid of being around low income communities.
Yeah.
And that is an equity check conversation is, I know Hispanic people, Asian people who use the word ghetto. To me, the word ghetto is a word that we should stop using as a whole. But so there's still that terms, like even like when we talk about equity, like there's more of like how do we inclusively look like not just diverse, but that we're comfortable with supporting the people around us. So when there is a new housing district in our areas, we're not going to them to say, because it's going to devalue, right? Because studies show that a kid from a low income background but lives in a strong area has able to succeed no different than their friends who maybe were more resourced because they're taking benefits of the same city areas.
Yeah. Well, and it goes to it was probably about a year ago now that all the people in like it was Monticello and then also the apartments like on West 7th were fighting against that affordable housing going in off of West 7th, going in off of Carroll, and like, all their quotes of like, I don't mind diversity, but there are better places for affordable housing. It's like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
You're just trying to like figure out how to not feel bad about yourself and justify what you're thinking. So yeah, totally agree and echo what you're saying. And I think this goes into this theme that we've been talking about for basically like a couple months now of like, how does Fort Worth sustain its growth or like, how does Fort Worth grow well? Like we were in Nashville last weekend for one of my cousin's weddings, and it's like Nashville has not grown well. Like there's so much construction going on. It's like impossible to get around. Like you can just tell how far behind they are. And when we think about how do we grow well, it comes with making sure that there is affordable and middle income housing within the city. And that, like everyone's having an opportunity to grow up in a diverse area.
Yeah.
But that kind of leads into this next article about the new Trinity Metro lines and how we can better connect everyone to the city in like an easy, accessible way with our bus system. And so Trinity Metro launched a better connection, which aims at making Fort Worth more accessible by public transportation. And so obviously with something new like this rolling out, you're going to have hiccups in communication, people getting on a bus and being like, oh, this isn't the route that I'm used to. But it basically narrows down and really makes easier to read the bus route for Fort Worth in general. And so like every 15 minutes, you've got a bus going by your stop that's going to get you to downtown quickly, make transfers easy. So that's what they launched. Bus rides will be free. Oh, they were free through September 11th. Never mind. But fares will be $1 for one-way rides and $2 for one-way access rides from September 12th to 31st. So if you've ever thought like, man, I really want to try out riding the bus, it's only $1 for one-way rides for the next month and a half. So that everyone can help figure out the new system. What do you think about this?
Yeah, and something I am going to push myself to do is starting to use public transportation more. That is a new goal. That give me 2 pods, maybe 4, because I'm going to be traveling the next 2 weeks. To next time I'm on here, I'm going to say I use it regularly because I do lift from my house. Like I just, because as a 1-car family, I do lift the meetings downtown, South Side. And so I am guilty. And what we talk about on the pod is like the most things that can solve, right? If we're going to solve school districts, if we're going to solve housing, if we're going to solve transportation, it takes us to get out of our comfort zones and make changes. And so I need to get out of the habit of just booking a lift, and I just need to take advantage of the transportation that's available. And so that's my goal. I think that's it. I think the other kicker here to note into the topic is there is also new routes where you don't have to go to downtown. Like there were some conversations around how that was kind of the pain back in the day where everything kind of went through downtown. So you'd have to stop in downtown to go to another part of Fort Worth. It seems like there's going to be routes around there that makes that not the case. So I think that's super cool.
Yeah. And so this redesign was a budget net zero redesign, so it doesn't cost them anything more. It's net zero, and honestly, like the map is pretty easy to read as well. It's very well color coded, and I feel like that was another thing with the old map and time tables that like you look at it and you're like, my head hurts, like I can't focus on anything and figure out when a bus is going to be here. But if you've got to stop by your house, like a bus is coming by there every 15 minutes without fail. And that's a positive thing for people being able to live and get around the city without needing a car.
Yeah.
So even though there's not more like news or investment in any sort of light rail expansion at this point, this is a very positive thing.
I don't know if you saw the story about Arlington with their Via rideshare stuff.
I don't think I did.
Oh, yeah. I know they're doing some work around, I think that was in, I want to say the Saturday Sunday paper, where they're doing a lot around kind of an Uber, but
similar to the Zip Zone.
Yeah. And I don't know much of that, but I know there's some big people who are fans of the Zip Zone as well.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if you had to take there, but it seems like neither of us do. So
yeah. But all this to say, like, if we have diverse population moving to the suburbs, we need to be able to connect people the way DART does really well with the suburbs to inside of Dallas, even though that's by train. And I think that this answers a lot of those questions, even though there's still more to be had with, especially they mention East Fort Worth and North Fort Worth, where the big needs were. They feel like they've answered a lot of those questions with this, and so now they're looking at how they can better incorporate some more parts of West Fort Worth as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to talk with Kyle Walker next pod.
Yep.
I personally think it's going to be my favorite pod because this is the stuff I just feel like we geek out about and we just talk about and know nothing really about, but what we get in reports. So actually having someone who does this for a living on the pod, it's going to be fun. And I'm going to hold some of my other thoughts around city planning and urban development for that pod. To just get his take. I want to try to say some things to see him say, no, you're wrong, or like, hey, that's funny, or like, I want to get him going and get him start talking about his opinions about it. So it's going to be exciting.
You ready to move on to wins and losses?
Let's do it.
What's your loss for this week?
My loss for this week is that these army worms, have you heard of these bugs? These army worms?
No.
Dude. I know I forgot what my original loss was in the thing, but then you asked me what is a loss, and all I've been thinking about are these army worms. I don't know if you heard about this, but it's like a big thing going on in DFW where these caterpillar things are like eating away people's lawns. And
is that why you have a big hole in your yard or like new dirt in your yard?
No, that's like, I think that was a tree.
Oh, okay.
My wife was filling for. No, but it's in like, it's like a thing. You got to look it up. It's like all over DFW. And it's these worms that are like, my backyard has been an apocalypse for like 2 months straight. And we have people come like spraying and it's just a mess, but it's happening to a lot of people. You definitely need to check it out. It does work, but it takes like 2 sprays. So it's like a month process. It's a real thing. And supposedly we sometimes have a high cases of this due to like, I guess, rainy summers.
Huh.
And yeah, they grow really quickly and they produce really fast. It's pretty nasty, but that's my loss. And if anyone else is dealing with it, I just want to let you know you're not alone.
I hope you get your worms fixed.
Yeah.
My loss is, okay, so we hit on this a few weeks ago of like, why do we continue to play this game about nonpartisan elections and like believing that Maddie Parker is a centrist, nonpartisan, believing that Betsy Price was being nonpartisan. And just kind of another example, like Maddie Parker endorsed George P. Bush for Texas Attorney General, and he sent out this tweet saying, as so many of our larger cities trend blue, Mayor Parker has been a conservative fighter for Fort Worth. She knows what it means to stand up for Texas values.
Yikes.
It's just like, we just need to stop playing the games with this. And it's real, like, there's one side of people benefiting from this, and they're the ones that continue to stay in power, and so perpetuate that same sort of notion. Yeah, like, let's just run partisan elections. Let's not allow people to continue to campaign on the idea that they're not one side or the other when we all know who they are, and it just becomes, yeah. We've talked about it before. It's just like another frustrating example of like, you told us you were somebody different from this, and now you're endorsing an ultra conservative person.
Yeah, and that's the part. I was like, to me, I believe the world's more centered, and Fort Worth is center-ish. And when I meant world, I meant America. So sorry for that. So, but here's the thing. I would have been okay if it was like a centered Republican that she was endorsing. Like, it would have been super cool. Like, let's say Governor Abbott gets someone competing against him who's more of a centered Republican. I actually think there's potentially someone doing that. And like, if Maddie came out or something and was like, hey, I don't believe how, Governor Abbott's handling women's rights or whatever. Like, I'm a Republican and I believe in, fiscal values or in that, this, and the third, and I voted this centered person, I'd be cool with something like that. Like, I'm like, okay, like you're still like acknowledging you're Republican and that you're acknowledging that you're trying to build a modern, maybe Republican Party with more, less crazy, conservative, not good stuff. But when you said when we looked at this guy's where he lands on a lot of these positions, this is a very kind of disappointing endorsement.
My issue is just that, like, don't tell me you're one thing and then act the other and then not be that, like, you're just lying to us for your own gain. And that's not cool. Like, that's not the sign of a leader.
Well, let's go to wins.
My win is Fort Worth Fashion Week is planning a launch party in October. So Philip Maximilian is a local fashion designer, and he has had this dream of, with other fashionistas in the area, launching Fort Worth Fashion Week. And honestly, like, this was something that we were supposed to do an event with them in March of 2020 with a documentary and like small fashion show and Q&A with some fashion leaders in the area that fell through for obvious reasons. But I was just really excited to see that this was still happening, that he was still pursuing this, and that it looks like it's going to come to fruition. So there aren't details yet about Fort Worth Fashion Week, but they have a launch party on October 2nd from 5 to 9 p.m. at 7 Lounge. That's a rooftop bar off of West 7th. Tickets are free for 21 and up. You can get more information at fwfashionweek.com. So I'm excited for Philip and the team of people that have been working on that, because it's something that was going to happen in 2020, and obviously things got derailed. So I'm excited for him and that team that this looks like it's coming to fruition.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think artists and creatives and people with ideas who have been able to endure and stay through the pandemic and still stay with it is a sign of resilience, and hopefully there's also just reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my win is going to go to the education route. In the Monday of the Star-Telegram front page, this was Labor Day. Teachers in Texas have fewer books in their classrooms than the national average, with more than 50% sharing in a survey that they have used their own money to stock libraries for their classrooms. Well, here's what's cool. A new program rolled out in August by Fort Worth Public Library could help teachers save money. The new library card for educators allow teachers to rent out up to 100 library books and materials for up to 42 days, twice as long as an ordinary library card. So this is allowing, 100 books. You talk about a class, if you have 20 kids, you have 5 periods. There you go.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's shout out to the library, and there's just a lot of cool things that the library actually does that even for what we do at the pod, we need to take more advantage of. From historical documents, like old Star-Telegram research. It's super cool, all the stuff that the library can do.
Yeah.
For us to look up things and to be informed.
Yeah. Yeah. We use a different section of the library, but we go to the new children's library a couple times a week now. Yeah, they just do a lot of great things and have a lot of great people involved with them. And so I think this is another really cool step that they're taking to making sure that kids have access to books and to good literature in the city and in the ISD.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, we did a full pod. It was great. Like we said earlier, Kyle Walker will be with us next week to continue this conversation on urban development. I just wanted to really acknowledge in this episode is we often think of suburban area as, white flight, and data shows that that's not fully the case. And I think that's awesome to see what's that story. And with new data showing the growth of minorities in suburban areas over than in the loop, what does that mean? And just explore that story and that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to getting to talk to him and share that with everyone.
Awesome. Well, take care, everyone. Have a great one, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Dopamine swipe, follow us like double tap. Now they control your life, control your life.